So if you've never seen one of my videos before, I'm Lauren and I like to talk about all things books. And with it being the start of a new month, we are naturally going to get into October's reading wrap up. So October was a really good month and a really bad month for reading. I will explain. I have reviewed some of the books as I've gone along. There are still some reviews to come. But yeah, overall, pretty decent month. I had one 5-star read, which will be a controversial pick, but we will get onto that shortly. But on the flip side of that, it wasn't a good month in terms of my reading was really up and down. So I had a bit of a reading slump, sort of a quarter, halfway through the month. And I don't think I'm fully out of that yet. And I'm not sure if it is a slump as such, or if it's just that my reading tastes are evolving and changing and just need to be a little bit different right now. So like, just to clarify that a little bit, I am normally a horror thriller reader, which obviously is perfect for October, but they aren't the kind of books that I've been enjoying. I've been enjoying more cosy books at the minute, and there are also a lot of books on my TBR that aren't my usual sort of books that I'm really excited to get to. So I think it's just a case that at the minute there are some other things, other genres that are pulling me in, and I am just going through a bit of a breakup with thriller and horrors at the moment. I think I've had to write them down and write down the star ratings that I gave them, because I am one of those people that will read a book and give it 5 stars, and then within an hour I couldn't tell you any of the plot. We move. So October reading wrap up. So I started the month, strange choice for most people, I know, but I started the month with my first ever extreme horror novel. Now I haven't really spoken about this in very many places because I know extreme horror is not for everyone, and I will say that you do, if you are going into an extreme horror novel, splatterpunk, please check trigger warnings. Do not read this genre based off someone's recommendation or review alone. Please do your own research on it. As I say, I am a big horror fan. Books, films, everything. And this is not mainstream horror. It lives up to its title. It is extreme. So I read 100% Match, and I ended up rating it 3.5 stars. For my first extreme horror, I thought it was decent. It had a storyline to it, which is always a big win, because I think from what I've gathered from splatterpunk books, you will find some that are just there purely to shock. This did have a storyline, so a big winner on that one. There were a couple of moments in it that were uncomfortable, but I would say probably the most intense part of this novel was definitely the ending. It's a very, very short book. I believe it's like 96 pages, so I read this all in one go. Had it been longer than 96 pages, I probably would have needed a break. It does get a lot. Like I say, the ending is very intense. But overall, a great introduction to extreme horror, and I probably will read more extreme horror in the future. Book number 2 for October was Autumnal, which is actually a book of short stories, and I usually don't get along with short stories, but I ended up rating this 4.25. I loved this. It had such a good vibe for the time of year. Every single one of the stories, bar the last one for me personally, were exceptional. It was a really good collection. I liked that they all sort of tied into each other, and I liked that they were all set in the fictional world of Autumnal Valley. I liked that there was that consistent theme running through that. But yeah, Autumnal, loved it. This is probably the first short story book that I have truly enjoyed. The next one was my one and only 5-star read of the month, and it went to The Pumpkin Spice Cafe, which, believe you me, shocks me probably just as much as it shocks you. But I absolutely adored this book. I've done a full review for it, so I will link that below, but is this the best work of literature that you are ever going to read? No. Is it cosy and warm with a little bit of spice? yes. And normally that is not the sort of thing I would read, but I just loved it. It's completely and utterly gripped me. And I plan on reading the second book in the series in November and then the third book in December, and then we have to wait until next year for the other ones to come out. But yeah, I loved it, and I'm well aware that there will be people questioning why I gave this book 5 stars, because it doesn't deserve 5 stars for all the reasons that I would normally give a book 5 stars. But I just had so much fun reading it, and yeah, I loved it. Go and check out my full review for it. My next book was The Quiet Tenant, which has been on my Kindle for quite some time, so I basically just picked this to cross it off the list because it's been there quite a while now. But I ended up giving this 4 stars. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. It is a thriller, and as I've already said, I am falling a little bit out of love with thrillers at the moment. It had some plot holes, but overall this was decent. It was really fast paced. Like, there were parts of this that I were reading like so fast just because it was really like getting your heart pumping and I wanted to know what was happening. So yeah, decent enough entry for a thriller to say that they're really not doing much for me at the minute. The next book was Fresh Hell, which is by the same author who did Autumn Crow. However, I only gave this 3 stars because I found, to say it was set in the same place as Autumn Crow, as the stories in Autumn Crow, it had a completely different vibe for me. So this was supposed to be like the 90s horror books, and I was really looking forward to that, but I just found it a little bit too gruesome and a little bit too depressing to actually have that 90s fun horror vibe. And it certainly didn't feel like the Autumn Crow that I'd read about in the Autumn Crow short stories. So I feel like had I not read Autumn Crow first, I might have enjoyed this a little bit more. But as it stood, it was a 3 from me. It was okay. There were times where I do wish I'd DNF'd it. The next one was Pumpkin Spice and Poltergeist, and we are returning to the cosy, spicy novels. However, this one is a sapphic novel. And yeah, I just got the same sort of cosy vibes from it as I did the Pumpkin Spice Cafe, to be honest. It does have a little bit of spice in it, however, it is different in this world. The people in the town, Maple Hollow, I think it is, they're all like monsters and paranormal beings, which I thought was a really like fun idea. So I gave this 4.5 because yeah, this was like at the height of my slump, so I was like, do you know what, I'm going to return to something that feels like Pumpkin Spice Cafe, and it just did it for me. I absolutely loved it. Really good book. I don't think it's one that's super well known, so I do highly recommend checking it out if you are after something that's a little bit cozy, a little bit spicy and really fun. The next one was Let's Split Up, and this is a book that if you are part of like Bookstagram or BookTok, that I have got no doubt you will have seen, because it's blown up, which is absolutely wonderful for the author Bill Wood. Bill started on BookTok and has built up a really good following from that and has now written his own book. And yeah, I loved this. I gave this 4 stars. It has its problems, which I feel like in part come from it being a debut novel, and I feel like there is room for improvement, and that might happen in future books. However, the nostalgia in this was just chef's kiss, because this is supposed to be like Scooby-Doo meets Scream. So it's a young adult novel, and I was utterly obsessed with Scooby-Doo growing up. I am a 90s child, so like that Scream era. Like I say, it is a young adult novel, probably 14ish and up, just because of the strong language used in it. But yeah, I loved it, and that cover is great. And I also got the sprayed edge edition of this as well, so bonus points there as well. The next one is one that I don't even know how to talk about. I haven't done a review of this, but I might do one because I do have a lot of thoughts on it that I cannot put into this video. And it was Gone to See the Riverman. So for the first time ever, and bear in mind I have been on Goodreads for years and years, way before I started doing like BookTok, BookTube, Bookstagram. I've been on Goodreads for a very long time, star rating my books. This is the first time I have not given a book a star rating, and that is not because it was a 0. It's because I genuinely don't know where to place it. Did I enjoy the book? No, I don't think I did overall. It had some massive faults for me, but it did have some really good moments. For the first, I would say 40–50% of this book, it feels like a mainstream horror. However, in the second half of the book, there are some very taboo subjects in here. Again, please check your trigger warnings, do your research. I can't say what they are on here. There are some very taboo subjects, which I do think makes it shift into the extreme horror genre. As a character study of the main character, excellent book. When we bring the Riverman into it, it just went off a cliff for me. I did not enjoy the Riverman plot at all, and the Riverman actually doesn't come into the book until quite late on. So I decided not to give this a star rating because I just can't. Make of that what you will. And then the last book for October was The Cemetery Ghost, which was a short book, and I ended up giving this 3.75. Now, this book is written by Amy Cross, and I read an Amy Cross book in September that I did a review for. It was in my reading wrap-up, and it was Stephen. And I absolutely loved that book. Like, I think I ended up rating like a 4.5, and it is hands down one of the best horror books that I have read in a very, very long time, and certainly this year. So I had high expectations going into The Cemetery Ghost, even though it is a shorter novel than Stephen. It was good, but it wasn't great. I guessed the twist in this book very, very early on. And there are some books, I feel like, where you can guess the twist and it doesn't really take anything away from it. And then there are other books where you do guess the twist and it does take away from the novel a little bit. And that was the case here. I feel like the whole book was centered on this reveal at the end, and it just didn't have the impact it should have had because I'd guessed it so early on in the book. But it was decent. It was like 140 pages, so yeah. It's not put me off Amy Cross novels. It was well written, and I will definitely be reading more Amy Cross in the future, but it just wasn't up to Stephen's standards. That being said, it will take a lot to get up to Stephen's standards. So I would love to know if you have read any of these books and what you thought of them, and how many books you read in October. Like, let me know in the comments, and I will see you guys next time.